Let's wind the clock back a little bit. Now, Pat and I kept in very regular touch as time went by, and we had meetings and coffee and things like that from time to time. We agreed to meet in my office. I was going to impress him. Massive office, personal assistant, telephones, aircon, everything, you name it, I got it. So Pat came in and sat down. He wasn't impressed in the slightest. And we talked, and we had a few things that were going on, and we had coffee. And he said to me, John, would you tell me what you think of this? That was an ad pack. Okay, but in those days, ad packs weren't as they are today. It's moved on. In those days, an ad pack was a brown envelope. Remember the brown envelopes? Yeah, you remember those. And inside was a tape and a thing called a 5-year card. I said, yeah, it's okay. I'll have a look at it for you. I'll let you know what I think, Pat. No problem. Now, I don't know how long those things have been out at that time. Now, if you want to contact people, there's one way of doing it. That's what they call cool hand Luke, isn't it? And that's what he did to me. And I went home to Nancy and stuck it on the tape deck in the car and played it. I got some twinges. Something was very different than it was, but I just really couldn't put my finger on it at all. And I arranged to go and see Pat, and I expected to see a rusted out Cortina and a similar kind of home. I mean, I still had scout up mentality, remember? Shock number one, I approached down a long driveway, wrought iron gates, arches, trees, Jaguar, BMW. Went to Pat's office, and do you know what I was thinking? I was still thinking about ways of making money outside this business, even with that in front of me. I was still thinking that. Isn't it crazy? Well, we looked at Pat's place, had a look round, and he showed me into his office, and I saw some books there, and I was impressed, and I said, well, can I have some of these? And he said, well, yeah, why don't you take this one, 7 Strategies for Wealth? So he gave it to me. I bought Body Language. I couldn't believe it. You see, when I knew Pat before, he was always going somewhere, always doing something, busy, busy, busy. But there he was, walk around the garden, look at this and look at this. We transplanted that from here to there. And he just had this aura of peace and quiet about him. I just couldn't come to terms with it. Then I got shock number 2. Did I tell you we were moving? No. Oh, well, why don't you look at these plans? This is what we're going to do. Couldn't believe it. Looked at the plans. And he said, well, if you've got a little while, why don't we nip down the road and I'll show it to you? It's not very far away. So he jumped in the car and went down. And there it was. He bought a 17th century farmhouse on a river frontage in many acres of ground. And what he'd done was to have the architect draw plans to extend it. And there was a bungalow right on the edge corner. And he'd included that and built above it. And he got this massive, massive home. It's just exactly like a hotel. And, there it was. And there now a swimming pool in the garden, heated indoor pool outside. That's good, isn't it? That's what you can do with a business. And he said, well, maybe before we go back, we'll just have a look at Jerry Scriven. I won't be able to go in because he's not in, but we'll go and have a look. So he took me around Jerry Scriven's house. And that was the next shock. I mean, I'd expected to see a rusted out Austin Princess in the driveway. Because that's what they had in those days. They lived in a dreadful, I'm sure they won't mind me saying it, but a horrible little wooden bungalow in Chew Magna in Bristol. It was so cold, we used to sit round a little tiny gas fire in the winter. And there it was, a beautiful farmhouse, luxury cars, and very, very slowly, the little sledgehammer got bigger and bigger and now whacked me on the top of the head and said, dummy! It began to penetrate. I said, it's just incredible. I thought, oh my goodness me. Well. You see, I had decided where success was. Years ago, I put up my ladder, I climbed the wall, got to the top, and eventually this isn't there at all. And I'd now jumped off. But what I'd done was to jump off with nothing at all. I'd spent years building for the company, for shareholders. They'd kept it, and as a matter of fact, they sold it too. And they paid me well to do it. So there's nothing wrong with that. It was okay. But I walked away with just memories because I had put my time, I'd spent it in the wrong system. Now, on the other hand, Pat and Jerry had invested time the same number of years, but only a tiny fraction of the hours that I had put in. They'd invested time, and now they were getting returns month after month after month from way in the history. And their business was on a boom, and it was going exponential. They had that glitterati lifestyle, but it was theirs. Couldn't be taken away. They had peace of mind. They had security that I couldn't even in those days begin to dream of. And Pat says to me as I was leaving, "Oh, John, you will remember Bill O'Brien, won't you?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, look, here's a couple of tapes. Why you play those on the way home?" Well, I left that day. I was absolutely shaken inside. I was very excited because at last I had the answer to the problem we had. I got the answer. I knew it. You see, Pat and Jerry had paid the price. They'd done the job. They'd put in the patent. They'd backed it with a system that anyone could use. And now they stood as just tremendous, phenomenal success stories, a tribute to what they had been taught from their upline from the States. All we had to do, basically, was to provide the guts and get out there and do it, make it happen for us. One challenge to go. It's Nancy. I know about Amway, and so does she. And I know what she's going to say. But I said, if you don't get in, there's going to be trouble. No, that's not true. We discussed it, and we agreed that we were going to get in. So Pat came to draw circles for us at our rented home, waiting for a move to Scotland. No one there, just Nancy and I. All I wanted to do was see the plan. How is it done now? Just show me. So he did. I made a lot of notes, and it was great. But I remember one thing from that evening, above anything else. One thing. I can remember going out in the car park, and Greta came behind me, and I turned around, and you know, Greta, she's got that beautiful smile, and she holds out her arms to you as she gives you a hug, well before you get close. And she held out her arms to me, and she looked deep into my eyes. And as she got right up here, she looked at me and she said, "John, we will never, ever be able to thank you enough for what you did for us." Now, she could not edify this business any more than if she tried. Because at that point in time, I knew, right in my guts, I knew that it would work, and it would work for me. And shock 3 came when Pat said, "Hey, why don't you come to a seminar and rally? There's one in Metropole in Birmingham. Why not go along?" Yes, okay. Now remember, I got drill hall mentality. I get to the NEC, massive car parks. There is the Metropole Hotel, a vast edifice of a place. And there are people, ants, thousands of them, floating off the car parks. You had to queue for ages even to get in the passageway, to get in the room. And I'd never seen so many people in my life. And then the noise, just like we see now, rose to a crescendo, and there on stage is Pat and Greta, my Pat and Greta. Well, I just couldn't believe it. With them? Wow. Just imagine. Drill hall mentality, see? 15 people in a dirty old scout hut. Well, Monday morning comes, I'm on the phone, 9 o'clock. I need a board and easel now. Get me 20 ad packs. I need to get going now. Well, just as it happened, Mike and Di Beasley were at Pat's home, and they said, "Yes, we'll bring them with you. We'll rendezvous with you." They did. They met me at Droitwich. That was a big shock too. I knew Mike Beasley when he was 6%. I went and drew plans in Mike Beasley's house. I can remember seeing a drunk slide off the settee saying, "This is a pyramid." You know? And there he was, and he had a BMW in those days. I couldn't believe it, a 535 BM with special equipment. Beasley. Oh, dear. I tell you, Mike and Di Beasley are incredible people. You know, they've helped us, they've supported us, they've motivated, cheered us on through every level of the business that we've been through. And we just want to earn the right to spend a lot of time with people like Mike and Di Beasley. They're wonderful givers. Now, we had a free enterprise, and we went off to free enterprise, and by then we were 5 wide. Now, the only trouble is they wouldn't go, so we went by ourselves. That was that. Next thing that happened, of course, that we had to move. We went to Scotland, and we had to leave these lovely people behind. And there we were in Scotland. Now, our house needed a little bit of work done to it, to put it mildly. So we decided what we would do is put our business on hold until January. Ever heard that one before? Oh no, we'll wait till January. Then we'll get going. Oh, well, I know how it is. I said that. I was dumb. Absolutely dumb. Now, the good news was that even though we procrastinated like that, we had one thing, and that was only one thing we had, and that was an upline that cared enough about us to say, look, come down to Dream Weekend. Come down. You need to see a bigger picture. My goodness, I'd already seen a big picture. We need to see a bigger picture. So, we decided we would, but it wasn't Birmingham or Sheffield, it was down in Torquay, as you've already heard, and it was terrible. The weather on the way, but we went there, and that gave us the impetus to get our business back on track again. Well, I'll tell you what we learned at Dream Weekend. The biggest thing for us was programming our minds for success, not failure. Nancy's mentioned that already. Now, those people we sponsored in England never went to a major function. They ain't with us today. And we began January 1, 1991 in Scotland with no distributors, no PV, and absolutely nothing apart from Pat and Greta Gregory. But by putting into place that one thing that we did learn at Dream Weekend, as Nancy said, we went silver in March. Well, what's it worth to you if you found that one thing that would get you silver by March? We began planned trainings in Turriff, Buckley's, believe it, for about 40 people. And again, we were beginning to see nothing was going to go wrong. This is tremendous. And what we'd done is we picked up just one key and applied it unmercifully to the business. That was it. And we then repeated what we'd done before. We whipped them up to a frenzy. The white tornado whizzed through, did most of the plans. Wow! Off again in a cloud of smoke, and left them there in just a pile of cosmic dust and confusion. That was it. Nothing left to nurture, help, or support them. And I'll tell you, we knew where we were going. We did. But what we didn't know, we could get them in, but we just couldn't, we didn't know how to keep them in. I had no idea how to keep them in. And I said we went silver in 3 months, but, after a little while, the 3 months, all the imperfections began to show in how we'd done it. And the cracks began to appear. And just as quick as we pushed one leg on, the other one sank back, and we put them in quick, and they fell out even quicker. We can keep them in. Now, I wouldn't phone Pat. I would not keep in with my upline. Didn't need him, see? So I didn't keep plugged in. I didn't want to talk to people in the group because they always had problems. And I wasn't interested in their problems because I had corporate mentality, remember, see? I want to speak to them if I thought if I didn't talk to them, they'd go away, and so would their problems. They did. They didn't come back either. You see, what I hadn't understood was it would only work long term if we committed to our people, uphill, down dale, going the extra mile for them, learning to hug people, learning to trust and not be afraid of building friendships. And that's the most powerful glue in this business, is friendships and building them. And that sets it apart from anything else. And also, here's another trite one for you tough guys, steely-eyed heroes like me, learning to love people, even if sometimes they're not lovable themselves, just like we weren't going back a little while. Well now, the consequence of my way had got so close it was bigger than me. Well, it had to bend double to get eyeball to eyeball, but in the end I had to acknowledge it. I had to phone Pat and said, look, don't know what's going wrong. What are we doing wrong with this? We talked about it. We spoke about the people, the group, for a little while, and that incredibly wise and patient, good friend already knew the answer, you see. But with failure right here, and right in my face, I was now ready to listen, and I wasn't before. And he said, John, how many people in your group have you got on co-ed? And I said, well, he already knew. And I said, well, I think it's, it's 5, Pat. Yes, it's 5. Well, can you imagine a silver with 5 people on co-ed? I mean, you begin to get the picture. Well, John, you see, the co-ed's a cement that holds the people together. It's part of the system. You've got to get them plugged in if you're going to succeed and help them. See, what I'd done was really short-circuit the system. I decided my group couldn't afford it, my group didn't need it, they just needed me. Here you go. Well, what right had I got to decide what part of the system my group should or shouldn't have? What right had I got to deny them success by withholding parts of a proven success package? I should have given it in its entirety, but I didn't. Well, we hoped Pat we hoped Pat would wave a magic wand, and he did. That was Tuesday. And he said, well, what are you doing tomorrow night, John? I said, well, nothing, of course. The group's falling apart, Pat, nothing. Well, he said, I'll tell you what, I'll travel up to meet you. I'll come to Glasgow and I'll meet you. Bring some of your people with you. Bring some core group people with you. Some of those people are in this room now. And Pat travelled up and we travelled down. We met him halfway, see? I mean, Glasgow's exactly halfway, isn't it, between Frome in Somerset and Aberdeen, you see? And that's what we did. We left after midnight and we had some keys. That's interesting, isn't it? People talk about this business and they say, you will be used by them, whoever they are. That's anybody upline, I presume. Now you can see how Pat used me, can't you? His time, his money, his petrol, his hotel. Do you know he even bought the coffee for all of us? Yeah. How many friends would do that for you? How many friends care enough about you to travel 10 miles, never mind hundreds of miles for us? Well, even after we screwed it up by not listening, he still came. That's the quality of the upline in this business. Now, we found building to Pearl incredibly rewarding. We've built many friendships. We got true friends in the deepest sense. The people who send us cards care about us genuinely. We've been allowed to share other people's lives as we work with them, help them overcome to become. And sometimes they've allowed us so close, we've seen them cry with frustration and not knowing which way to go. We've had that privilege of being that close. We've grown incredibly close as a couple by building together and working together as a team. We've experienced a tremendous amount of personal growth ourselves, and hopefully we'll continue to do so. Our relationship together has matured because we've read many books on families, relationships, and we've gained insight and understanding, and we've passed that on to people in the group too. Books like Total Woman. I've read it. You want to get it, I tell you. Oh boy, chapter 10 is something else. If only he knew. That's another book. See, there aren't many men around, to be honest with you. There really aren't that many men around. If you want to know what it takes to be a man, then you buy a book called If Only He Knew, and you do it. You buy a book called Man of Steel and Velvet and act on it. A Man's Touch. Books called Hide or Seek about children. And we put in practice what we read. Our children today are positive little can-do guys, I tell you. That's just a result of what we've learned. We're not clever, we just learned it. We travelled. Nancy said we did a leadership seminar in Sicily, Cyprus, Madeira, and next year we look forward to a cruise on the Cunard Princess around the Greek islands. Now, that's not bragging to you, but do you know the wonderful thing is that we have the power in our hands, as you do, to take any of our dear friends with us so we can sit in the jacuzzi together. That's a wonderful thing, and there aren't many businesses where you can do that, to be honest with you. If you've got a grocer's shop, you can't get your friend round the corner and start him up in grocery to take him on holiday, can you? We've met people who've been our heroes from early days, and their friendship and respect means more to us than any kind of respect I could have got with a little tin badge saying, "Director, respect me, look at my badge." Much more value than that. And money, well, to be perfectly honest with you, we stopped thinking about it. We know it's there in very large quantities. And we're seeing it more closely now as we develop our business and work with people and look forward to achieving the lifestyle of our leaders. But you know, the most wonderful thing to us is that we know what John and Nancy were. And we know if John and Nancy can go pearl, then any of you can go pearl, absolutely, without any shadow of a doubt. And I'll tell you, the biggest pleasure we're going to have as this thing unfolds in the future is seeing direct after direct going across stages, not just here, but across the country, out of your groups in the future, as they grow nationally, internationally as well. Let me just finish with one thought, that is this. In 5 years, all of us, God willing, will be planning Christmas 1999. Alex will be 10, Holly going to be 9. We'll also be planning where to spend New Year's Eve 1999. It's going to be an incredible time for us all. You see, it's a milestone for humanity. It's the end of a decade. It's a new beginning, a whole new millennium starting, the year 2000. And not for 1,000 years has this ever happened before. Not in your father's time, his father, his father, his father, for 1,000 years. And the question is this: where will we stand on New Year's Eve 1999? Will we take our families to Jamaica for the carnival fun of the New Year's Eve celebrations and the warmth of the climate? Are we going to take our family and stand in the midst of a great wilderness in Australia on the outback on top of Ayers Rock, maybe, and see the sunrise? Maybe we're going to stand with our family 16,000 feet up in the Himalayas, and we're going to look to where the sun rises in the east and see it just break over those jagged mountain crests and let the sun of a new millennium strike our families' faces in the Himalayas. Maybe when we get to the airport, we're going to get picked up and taken home in our Bentley 8 to drive down our road to our home. Maybe we'll open a door that's set between white colonnades, and we're going to open it onto a peach marble hallway to be greeted by our housekeeper that we love to bits and pieces as a mother. In contrast, we're going to shake hands with our next door neighbour over the garden hedge we've been clipping for years, and still be whinging about the same things we whinged about last year, the year before, the year before, and the year before that too. And think to ourselves, well, maybe next year will be different. Well, it will be. You bet it will be. If we decide, that is, it will be. And what we do in the next 12 to 18 months is going to decide where we have that milestone on New Year's Eve. And tell you now, 12 to 18 months starts now. Now. Right now. So dream big.
Set your goals and go and do it. You have not a minute to lose. And we love you.